is Sam Petta. It's S-A-M-P-E-T-T-O. I'm the Communications Director at the ACLU Nebraska. 2 weeks ago, Nebraska Secretary of State announced a directive that threatens to deny the votes of thousands of Nebraskans. We and the Nebraska Voting Rights Restoration Coalition promised that we would do everything we could. Today, we are making good on that promise. You're going to hear from a few speakers about today's news. I've asked each to say and spell their name and provide their title if they have one before they provide their remarks. After their comments, we'll have an opportunity for questions. With that, it's my pleasure to turn things over to Jane.
Hi, everyone. My name is Jane Sue, J-A-N-E-S-E-U. I'm Legal and Policy Counsel at the ACLU Nebraska. Today, we filed a lawsuit with the Nebraska Supreme Court on behalf of our friends at Civic Nebraska and 3 Nebraskans who are being wrongfully denied the right to register to vote by Nebraska Secretary of State. We want to thank our courageous clients for advocating for their rights and our co-counsel in this case, ACLU National's Voting Rights Project and the law firm Fagery Drinker. We're grateful for their support. We're also grateful to be joined, let's skip that. On July 17th, Secretary of State Bob Evnen announced he had directed county election officials to ignore a recent state law that allows Nebraskans to vote as soon as they have completed all terms of a felony sentence, including probation and parole. He ordered them to stop registering voters with past felony convictions. But his actions went beyond that. His notice implied that currently registered voters with past felony convictions are not eligible to vote without the blessing of the Board of Pardons, a group that includes just our Secretary of State, our Attorney General, and the Governor. I want to be clear, we believe Secretary Evnen is unlawfully denying thousands of Nebraskans access to the ballot, including our clients. Without action from the judicial branch, thousands of Nebraskans who are legally entitled to vote will be denied a say in November's election, an election that Nebraskans of every party agree will have consequential stakes for the future of our state and our country. That is why our clients are turning to the courts. We are asking for the Nebraska Supreme Court to, 1, take up the case, given its nature and urgency, and issue court orders that will require the Secretary of State to do his job and follow the law by facilitating the vote for all eligible voters. We seek similar orders for local county election commissioners who have been put in this position by Secretary Evnen. It is an understatement to say that it is extremely troubling that these Nebraskans have to sue our state's top election officials just to get them to follow the law and let eligible voters vote. But here we are, and we will do all we can to ensure access to the ballot. Thank you.
Next, we're going to hear from T.J. King, one of our plaintiffs. T.J.
Good afternoon. T.J. King, T.J. K-A-N-G. I am the Outreach and Admin for a national nonprofit organization. Not only that, I am definitely somebody that this is going to affect. I am somebody that is system impacted. I just had a little sit down with one of my friends, and they asked me, what did I want for the outcome from what we're doing? I said the obvious. I said, I want to vote. I said, being system impacted is already hard enough for certain people. Having your rights taken away, not being able to have a voice, not being able to be a productive member of society, kind of stinks. Having a voice for people that are not able to speak is something that I think is super important. As I mentioned, not only am I somebody that is system impacted, I represent more than just one marginalized community. So I think it's important that I give that voice. Being able to vote is a right. Being able to be a contributing member of society is what you're supposed to do. I was having a conversation with my mom the other day. I'm like, okay, if they don't want me to vote, I'm not paying taxes anymore. Tell me that I don't have to pay taxes. I said, I'll gladly not vote anymore. But we all know that's not going to happen. America is built on second chances. If we are not able to give grace to people that have made a mistake, we're in a bad situation, guys. We're in a bad situation, especially with the climate that it is right now. I'm not just talking about it here, but y'all know what I'm talking about, the climate. People's voices need to be heard. Because you made a mistake, because you paid for your mistake, and now that you've come out from your mistake, you should be able to vote. Every other right is afforded back to you. As I mentioned, taxes. You have to work. You have to pay your mortgage. Got to walk your dog and pick up the poo if you have to. why not be able to vote? It's crazy to me. It's one more way for one more group to be marginalized. It's one more way for a certain group to say, it's okay for you to do it, but you can't do it. It's one more way for somebody to have control over a situation they have no business being in control of. So I think it's important that we have our voice heard. I think it's important that we have our voice heard loud and letting them know that we're not going to stand for it. You may have been able to try it maybe about 10, 20 years ago, or back in 2005. But we're not standing for it now. So having my voice heard, that's what I want the outcome to be. Having my voice mean something, that's what I want it to be. Being able to be a contributing member of society, that's what it's going to be. Because we're not going to stand for it. Thank you, guys.
Next, we're going to hear from Greg, another one of our plaintiffs. Where are you hiding, Greg? There you are.
Hi, my name is Gregory Spung, Gregory Spung. I live in South Omaha, and I was planning to vote this fall. I became newly eligible thanks to LB 20. To me, this is bigger than just one election and just my vote. There's a widespread belief among Americans that every citizen's vote matters. This principle is upheld by the vast majority of states that facilitate the automatic restoration of voting rights once someone has finished a felony sentence. In stark contrast to the principle that every vote matters, Nebraska Secretary of State Evans' defiance of the new voter restoration law introduces an arcane, arbitrary, and opaque clemency process for voting rights restoration. This effectively silences us a meaningful role in our democracy. The overwhelming passage of LB 20 rectified an unfair process that not only disenfranchised those of us who could have otherwise reintegrated as responsible, engaged citizens, but also undermined the very foundation of our democratic values. It is not enough to say that every vote matters. For that to be true, every eligible voter should be able to vote, including me and every other Nebraskan who has made a mistake and done their best to make up for it. I'm hoping by participating in this lawsuit, I can help not only make sure that I can vote, but ensure that's true for everyone in similar circumstances. Thank you.
Next up is my friend Steve Smith, speaking on behalf of Civic Nebraska, our organizational plaintiff.
Thanks, everybody, for being here today. Hopefully this is the first and the last time we have to meet on this subject in this unprecedented and unfortunate time. My name is Steve Smith. I will spell that. Stevesmith. I'm the Director of Communications at Civic Nebraska. Our organization is among the plaintiffs in this legal action, and this being a consequential election year, we do hope the court will deliver a speedy resolution. Because we have work to do. We have work to do. Civic Nebraska's core mission is to engage and assist Nebraskans who wish to register and to vote. We do this because we believe a truly representative democracy is only possible when as many voices and as many people are legitimately heard. Since mid-April, when LB 20 passed overwhelmingly with bipartisan support in the Nebraska legislature, Civic Nebraska has been conceiving and planning and building a robust voter registration initiative to help the thousands of affected Nebraskans finally get registered. Of course, we were forced to abruptly stop that work less than 2 days before the law was to take effect because of actions of our state's legislative branch. In having to reverse our plans, Civic Nebraska has incurred unexpected and unnecessary costs, and the fallout from the Secretary of State's actions has created confusion and diverted our focus away from this core mission. So we have turned to the Nebraska Supreme Court to instruct the executive branch to do what one elected official has unilaterally decided to do, to not do: follow the law. It's a straightforward request. for the court to confirm that Nebraskans can register to vote according to the law that is on the books. Friends, the stakes here are self-evident. The executive branch's actions have disenfranchised a significant portion of our state's electorate. Tens of thousands of voters' rights have now disappeared at one person's discretion. Civic Nebraska is committed to ensuring that all eligible citizens have the opportunity to participate in the democratic process. And it is well within our mission to challenge decisions such as this that is unjustly disregard our fellow Nebraskans' civil rights. And in closing, I'd say this. By challenging this directive, Civic Nebraska is not simply joining a lawsuit to protect the rights of a finite number of our state's voters. We are defending the very essence of democratic self-government, where every voice matters, where every vote counts, and friends, where no one should live in fear that their government is going to come for more of their rights. Thank you.
Now we're going to wrap up comments with another friend and colleague of mine, policy fellow Jason Whitmer, and then we'll have time for questions.
I'll be short. Jason Whitmer, Whitmer, Jason if you don't know how to spell that one. Sorry. We are living in a highly political era, so much so that it has found a way to separate neighbors, to separate friends, to separate families. However, I think the majority of us agree that when it comes to fundamental rights, those need to be protected. They should be first and foremost protected. And that is what we're asking of our state officials. All Nebraskans have recognized that disenfranchisement of those who have been convicted of felonies, served their time, and attempting to reintegrate into our communities is a recipe for failure. And our state senators agree. They have come together as a bipartisan majority to restore the voting rights for everyone who has served their time. Voting is not just a right, it is an investment into people, it is an investment into community. Now, to say the least, it is disappointing to see the Attorney General and the Secretary of State work to deprive individuals of their right to vote. We do not need a government that consolidates power and ignores the will of the people. What we need is one that supports us and protects us in times of need, and them times are now. So what we are asking is that those officials who are doing this, those officials who have power, and the people who have already spoken, to stand up and protect all Nebraskans' right to vote. Thank you.
And with that, what questions do you have?
I know Hall County is having a special election coming up in August. Do you know how fast this decision might be made, or how quickly this could go along? Will it be before that special election?
Jane, you want to field that? And for the mic, the question was Hall County's Grand Island area special election going on right now.
Yeah, so with special elections happening in areas of Nebraska, and with the directive coming from the Secretary of State a couple weeks ago, that shows that it's already having an impact on elections right now, that there are folks who are being kept from the ballot. That goes to why we're making this request to the Supreme Court that we need this case decided urgently so that all folks can participate in our upcoming elections.
Do you know how many disenfranchised voters are in that area?
I don't have that number for you, but we can get back to you.
Aaron.
Sam, you talked about before the 7,000 folks who were hoping to be able to be eligible to register under the new law. Given that this affects both population pools, do you have a breakdown yet of how many for each pool from the original 53 and from 20 are affected?
Does somebody in the Restoration Coalition, do we know? That might be one we have to get back to you on, Aaron. I don't know if that made it into a filing or we have a hard number, but I see some voting rights friends who might have ideas. We'll put our heads together.
Will this also have an effect on all of the
questions about petitions, legal implications there? Jane or Rose? You want to speak toward that, if we know? Go.
What we know from the Secretary of State's directive is that folks who are registering after his directive the day after are no longer going to be eligible to vote, but folks who had been registered, he would not be removed from the voter rolls at this time. But we don't know what he's going to do in the future.
Steve, can you speak to the difficulty, I mean, obviously you guys are trying to organize and register voters under this new law. You talked about the difficulty of confusion and trying to fight that now with multiple messages about whether you can or cannot register?
Yeah, confusion was the base sort of status in Nebraska. In our work, we've seen so many people who were justice and system impacted that thought that they'd lost their rights entirely. They weren't aware that they could do after a 2-year ban. So that's where we were starting from, Aaron, was a lot of confusion. Obviously, with the news of this spring, obviously we've been working with education, basically, working with a public education and then reaching out to those folks one-on-one, saying, you know, you can vote now. And of course, the timing of this has really thrown a wrench in that narrative, so to speak. And so that's caused us, it's caused quite a bit of havoc in our attempts to roll that out, just to simply get people to register to vote.
Other questions? We scheduled it toward end of day so that you all just want to turn your stories. I'm kidding.
For any of the clients, can you talk a little bit about what it's meant emotionally to have this happen now when you were so close to being able to register?
Greg or TJ, do either of you feel comfortable speaking toward that? Yeah, come on up. Start with you, and then TJ, if you want to follow up.
Not understanding the law completely, I attempted to restore my vote early through a process called judicial set-aside, only to find out later that that had no effect at the election office. So I was extremely excited that this law passed and I would be eligible to participate. And, you know, conversely, very disappointed with the Secretary of State's decision. It was just crushing.
TJ, do you want to add to that? At the mic, so they can't. You two can chat otherwise.
So for me, it was like that game when you were little. You know, takesy backsies. That's what they did. I was not somebody that had registered yet because there was a bunch of us that were going to go ahead and go, and there were some that were system impacted that had not finished their prerequisite in order to do what they needed to do. So we all were going to go together. So me not doing that, and then that coming out, this was definitely something that I didn't foresee coming at all. If somebody would have told me that, even when somebody told me about it, I was like, you're lying. But it happened. It's very disheartening that we are still, at 2024, still trying to have a thumb or a finger or a foot on marginalized communities and people that are system impacted, or definitely people that are marginalized. But what everybody needs to realize is that, don't shoot me, you are one peeing behind a bush away from being a felon. That's it. So being able to vote means a lot more than just being able to vote. It means you being who you were before you were system impacted. It means who you were before this thing happened, that you paid your debt to society to. So them saying that they are going to do this, I say no takesy backsies.
Any last questions? All right, thank you all for being here. You know how to get a hold of us, and we will see where this goes. Greg, Jeremy, TJ, where did TJ go?